মই অনুৰোধ কৰিব কৰিছোঁ শ্ৰী মুজিবুৰ ৰহমান। অলপ শৰ্টলি ক'ব, আপোনালোকে তিনিজন দি দিছে।
Honorable Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me an opportunity to part on the discussion on National Education Policy 2020, sir. Sir, few days back in a orientation program on NEP 2020 held at Assembly GNB Bhavan, where I participated and learned a little bit from the presentation of experts and what I understand expressed to share in this house to introduce or implementation the new education policy 2020 have some major challenges. That's the new education policy 2020 brings in ambitious changes that could transform the education system, but the key here is good implementation and execution. That the education policy 2020 is a welcome and ambitious reimagination of India's education system into a modern, progressive and equitable one. Successful execution of this policy calls for dramatic simplification of decision-making structures and reprioritization the budgetary resource in months and years to come. Given that there are around 350 million Indians today in school going or college going age groups, the NEP calls for a large-scale implementation of magnitude never before attempted anywhere in our country. This presents substantial execution challenges, both quantitative and qualitative. That's the National Education Policy 2020 intends to bring 2 crore children who are currently not in school back into the school system. Whichever way you look back, accomplishing this over 15 years this certainly requires a substantial amount of investment in classroom and campuses. But it also means appointing at least 50 headmasters every single week and at least 200 to 300 teachers every single week in an ongoing basis. Given that many teaching positions are going unfilled even in existing schools, this becomes a particularly interesting challenge, the setting up of around 50 schools in every week. That's India today has around 1,000 universities across the country. Doubling the gross enrollment ratio in higher education by 2035, which is one of the stated goals of the policy, will mean that we must open one university every week for the next 15 years. Opening one university every week on an ongoing basis is an undoubtedly massive challenge for us. That's Honorable Speaker, sir, funding also is a big challenge for us. The National Education Policy 2020 envisages an increase in the education spending from 4.6% to 6% of GDP, which amounts to around rupees 2.5 lakh crores per year. This money will be spent building schools and colleges across the country, appointing teachers and professors, and more operational expenses such as providing free meal to the school children. What makes things tricky is that this policy comes into being at a time when the economy has been crushed by COVID-19. Related lockdowns, government taxes, collections are very low, and the fiscal deficit was high even pre-COVID. That, Honorable Speaker, sir, current economists have been calling for large stimulus packages amounting to double-digit percentage of GDP, despite the strain on the exchequer, while the national education policy is a 20-year journey. One worries that we may off to stumbling start over the next 2 to 3 years when the government had budgetary priorities are claimed by the more urgent but equally important needs of healthcare and economic recovery. Honorable Speaker, sir, in schools educations, the policy envisages a sweeping structural redesign of the curriculum, a big welcome step, sir. It's also a big welcome step, sir. Just 2 minutes, sir. But in order to deliver this curriculum effectively, we need teachers who are trained in and understand the educational needs. Many of the curricular changes require substantial mindset shifts on the part of teachers as well as the parents and students also.
Submission koriba mantri. ঠিক আছে?
Finish, sir. Just within 2 minutes I can finish, sir.
সময় কম সেইকাৰণে আপুনি যেহেতু ৰিটেন দিছে আপুনি ৰাখিলে আৰু হেতু মন্ত্ৰী ডাঙৰীয়াক আপুনি সাবমিশন কৰি দিও বা ইয়াত লে কৰি দিলে
Thank you, sir.
হৈ যাব ঠিক আছে